glimmer of hope you see. That's me. The heavens guide me.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
My heart is filled with starlight. I give it freely to all.
30 seconds until minions spawn.
You protect an entire... Okay.
Back to HQ.
Just as the mountain is eternal, so is hope.
Minions have spawned.
Why is it always the ugly ones? Truth is worth fighting for, but beauty is worth dying for. Elegance never helped win a fight. It never hurt. Demacia was my home. The stars are my destination. Human life is stars are eternal.
Ready to surrender yet?
The stars freed me from myself. Sometimes, life is worth dying. The mountain reveals the harshest truths in our souls. Let's climb that mountain, shall we? The best weapons are beautiful. Stand against them. To truly see the stars, I climbed.
Head shot.
Left to right.
Easy on the eyes. Don't I know? Love is simply beauty crystallized. The mountain showed me my path. Look sharp. We see beauty in the stars, and they see beauty in us.
An enemy has been slain.
Rest easy.
You have been slain. An enemy has been slain.
We're all headed toward the same inevitable end. No need to rush. I am no longer the man I once was. not worry. I am here.
Has been slain.
I may be merciful, but target.
Has been slain.
The stars were the question. I was the answer. Truth sparkle even in the absence. An aspect's work is never done. And one of these. The mountain's mysteries are known to me. The mountain's question is unique for each of us.
An enemy has been slain.
Is a rare jewel.
And they won't be miss.
Always forward. A little something from Targon. My heart is filled with stars. With a true challenges await. Always useful. Just as the mountain is eternal, so is hope. Why is it always the ugly? Truth is worth fighting for, but beauty is worth dying.
Turret plating will fall soon.
Crack their resolve. Elegance never helped win a fight, but it never hurt. Demacia was my home, but the stars are my destination. Human life is fleeting. A mountain's life less so. Stars. Stars are eternal. The stars freed me from myself.
Shut down.
Sometimes life is worth dying. The mountain reveals the harshest truths in our souls.
Their ABCs of success. Always be cleaving.
The best weapons are beautiful. To truly see the stars. Easy on the eyes, no time to hurry. Nothing personal.
Your turret has been destroyed.
Love is simply beauty crystallized. Beauty in the stars, and they see beauty in us.
An ally has been slain.
Let's climb that mountain, shall we? One can always use extra clarity. Your protector speaks through me. We're all headed for the same inevitable end. No need to rush.
As expected.
too clearly to ever fear the darkness. The stars were the question, ours was the answer. True gems sparkle even in the absence of light. The mountain's mysteries are known to me. No, I didn't see stars. The mountain's question is unique for each of us. Each life is a rare creature. My heart is filled with starlight. I give it free to all.
Rampage.
Just as the mountain is eternal, so is hope.
Has destroyed the turret. Your team has destroyed an inhibitor.
Why is it always the ugly? glimmer of hope you see. That's me.
A summoner has disconnected. A summoner has reconnected.
The stars were the question.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
How come no one ever tells me to reload?
30 seconds until minions spawn.
You're dead weight. Get a haircut. Trust me. Keep the change. You're gonna need it.
I answered for my crimes. Now it's your turn. I am no
Minions
longer
have
the man
spawned.
I once was. The best weapons are beautiful.
A summoner has disconnected. A summoner has reconnected.
Something bigger than this time? The mistake
True
you
gems
made standing
sparkle
in its
even in
sight.
the absence.
A summoner has disconnected. A summoner has reconnected.
Just as the mountain is eternal, so is hope. Love is simply beauty crystallized. Arrogance never helped win a fight, but it never hurt.
First blood.
The Protector speaks through me. They see beauty in us.
An enemy has been slain. An ally has been slain.
Keep up!
The mountain reveals the harshest truths in our souls. Demacia was my home, but the stars are my destination. We're all headed
Ally has been slain.
to the land. No need to rush. We go. The mountain.
An ally has been slain. You have slain an enemy.
Stand against them.
You have been slain.
No rest for the chosen of Targon. Money well spent. I may be merciful, but Targon isn't. Never end.
I can bear it.
To truly see the stars, I climbed. The stars freed me from myself. Sometimes life is worth dying.
An ally has been slain.
The mountain's question is unique for each of us. Fight on! Let's see how hot things get.
Hearts beat together.
slain. An ally has been
See the
slain.
light too clearly to ever fear the darkness. Let's climb that mountain, shall we? A fine addition.
Timo, are these mushrooms your rations or your amp?
The mountain's mysteries are known to me. Human life is fleeting. The mountain's life less so. Stars. Stars are eternal. Mind your step. The mountain showed me my path. Easy on the eyes, don't I know?
Enemy killing spree.
Food is worth fighting for, but beauty is worth dying. You must serve right.
Killing spree. You have been slain. Double kill. Killing spree. Triple kill.
No, I didn't see stars.
The one driver drops off the other that then drives you home
Each
Oh.
time.
Oh, yeah.
in their car, in your car,
Yeah.
so that you can. I mean, I think a lot of people would pay $50. It's going to be more than a regular Uber.
Yeah.
But it's like it's going to be done. I got the money. I already spent $60
Yep.
at the bar tonight. Like, just get the damn thing done. Tomorrow I'm done with it. My car. I wake up. My car's in front of my house.
Yeah.
I
give
think
it
that would
free
be.
to
I think
all.
someone could. I'm not going to open that business. So like, if anyone hears this and wants to take off with that, like, I think it could help a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. And Uber itself, I would say, helped a huge amount of people. Just making it easy to make the decision of going home, not driving yourself.
The stars
I read
was
about
a
in
question.
Austin where they, I don't know where it's at now, but where they outlawed Uber for a while, you know, because of the whole taxi cab union type thing, and how just, yeah, there were like hordes of drunk people that were used to Uber that now didn't have a cheap alternative.
We didn't exactly mention, we've done a lot of studies on sexual decision making with different drugs. Is there some interesting insights or findings on the difference between the different drugs? I think you said meth as well, so cocaine. Is there some interesting characteristics about decision making that these drugs alter versus like alcohol, all those
Yeah.
kinds of things?
I think, and there's much more to study with this, but I think the biggie there is that the stimulants, they create risky sex by really increasing the rewarding value of sex. Like if you talk to people that are real, especially that are hooked on stimulants, one of the biggies is like
And life.
sex on coke or meth is like so much better than sex without, and that's a big part of why they have trouble quitting, because it's so tied to their sex life.
So it's not that your decision making is broken. It's just that you allocate.
It's a different
dispropor-
aspect
yeah.
of their decision. Yeah, on the reward side. I think on the alcohol, it works more through disinhibition. It's like alcohol is really good at reducing the ability of a delayed Punisher to have an effect on current behavior. In other words, there's this bad thing that's going to happen tomorrow or a week from now or 20 years from now. Being drunk is a really good way, and you see this in like rats making decisions. You know, a high dose of alcohol makes someone less sensitive to those consequences. So I think that's the lever that's being hit with alcohol, and it's just the increasing the rewarding value of sex by the psychostimulants on that side. We actually found that and it was amazing because like hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent by NIH to study the connection between cocaine and HIV. Like we ran the first study on my grant that like actually just gave people cocaine under double-blind conditions and showed that like, yeah, when people are on coke, like their ratings of sexual desire, even though they're not in a sexual situation, yeah, you've shown them some pictures, but they're just saying they're horny. Like you get subjective ratings of like how much sexual desire you're feeling right now. People get horny when they're on stimulants. And
Do you have a
lot of people say duh if they really know these drugs.
But that's a rigorous study that's in the lab that shows like there's a plot.
The dose effects of that, the time course of that. Yeah, it's not
Can
just.
you please tell me there's a paper with a plot that shows dose versus evaluation of like horniness?
Yeah, we didn't say horniness. We said sexual arousal. Yeah, basically, yeah.
There's a plot. I'm gonna find this plot.
Right, I'll send it to you. There was one headline from some publicity on the work that said, "Horny cocaine users don't use condoms," or something like that. Like,
You gotta
something
love
like
journalism.
That. Like, I wouldn't have put it that way, but like, yeah, that's
I guess that's
right
what
on.
it finds. So you.
Your turret has been destroyed. An enemy has been slain.
Not true Targonian. Still nice, though. The Protector speaks through me.
An ally has been slain.
We see beauty in the stars.
An ally has been slain.
The mountain reveals the harshest truths in our souls.
Your team has destroyed a turret. An enemy has been slain. An ally has been slain. Your turret has been destroyed.
My destination. I climbed Mount Targon. You did not. We're all headed for the same inevitable end. No need to rush.
An enemy has been slain.
I may be merciful, but Targon isn't.
An enemy has been slain.
To truly see the stars, I climbed. me from myself.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
Sometimes life is worth dying. Let's climb that mountain, shall we? Always useful. The mountain's question is unique for each of us. Why is it always the ugly? I have seen the light too clearly to ever fear the darkness.
An ally has been slain. An enemy has been slain. Ace.
Greatest mentor. The mountain's mysteries are known to me. For beauty. Human life is fleeting. A mountain's life less so. Stars. Stars are eternal. The mountain showed me my path. Bigger. Easy on the eyes. No time. But beauty is blind. A little something from Tara. Each life is a rare thing.
Shut down.
Aspect's work is never done.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
published a bunch of studies on psychedelics. Is there
The stars were the
some
question.
especially favorite, insightful findings from some of these that you could talk about? Maybe favorite studies or just something that pops to mind in terms of both the goals and the major insights gained and maybe the side little curiosities that you discovered along the way.
Yeah, I think of the work with like using psilocybin to help people quit smoking, and we've talked about smoking being such a serious addiction, and so that what inspired me to get into that was just kind of having like behavioral psychology as my primary lens, sort of this sort of like kind of radical empirical basis of. I'm really interested in the mystical experience and all of these reports. Very interested, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, let's get down to some behavior change and something that we can record, like quantitatively verify biologically. So
To find all kinds of negative behaviors that people practice and see if we can turn those into positive. Or
right,
change those
like
behaviors.
really change it, not just people saying, which again is interesting, I'm not dismissing it, but folks that would say my life has turned around, I feel this has completely changed me. It's like,
Just as the
yep, that's good. All right, let's see if we can harness that and test that into something that's real behavior change. You know what I mean? It's quantifiable. It's like, okay, you've been smoking for 30 years. Like that's a real thing. And you've tried a dozen times, like seriously to quit, and you haven't been able to long term. Like, okay. And if you quit, like we'll ask you, and I'll believe you, but I don't trust everyone reading the paper to believe you. So we're gonna have you pee in a cup, and we'll test that, and we'll have you blow into this little machine that measures carbon monoxide, and we'll test that. So multiple levels of biological verification. Like now we're getting like, to me that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of like therapeutics. It's like, can we really shift behavior? And since in so much as we've talked about, my other scientific work outside of psychedelics is about understanding addiction and drug use. So it's like, looking at addiction, smoking is just a great example. And so back to your question, like we've had really high success rates. I mean, it rivals anything that's been published in the scientific literature. The caveat is that, that's based on our initial trial of only 15 people, but extremely high long-term success rates. 80% at 6 months per smoke-free.
So can we discuss the details of this? So first of all, which psychedelic are we talking about? And maybe can you talk about the 15 people and how the study ran and what you found?
Yeah. So the drug we're using is psilocybin, and we're using moderately high and high doses of psilocybin. And I should say this about most of our work. These are not kind of museum level doses. In other words, nothing even big fans of psychedelics want to take and go to a concert or go to the museum. If someone's at Burning Man on this type of dose, like they're probably going to want to find their way back to their tent and zip up and hunker down for, not be around strangers. Yeah.
And by the way, the delivery method, so psilocybin is mushrooms, I guess. What's the usual? Is it edible? Is there some other way? Like, how are people supposed to think about the correct dosing? Because I've heard that it's hard to dose correctly.
That's right. So in our studies, we use the pure compound psilocybin. So it's a single molecule, a bunch of molecules, and we give them a capsule with that. And so it's just a little capsule they swallow. What
They see beauty in us.
people, when psilocybin is used outside of research, it's always in the context of mushrooms, because they're so easy to grow. There's no market for synthetic psilocybin. There's no reason for that to pop up. The high dose that we use in research is 30 milligrams, body weight adjusted. So if you're a heavier person, it might be like 40 or 50 milligrams. We have some data based on that data, we're actually moving into like getting away from the body weight adjusting of the dose and just giving an absolute dose. It seems like there's no justification for the body weight based dosing, but I digress. Generally 30, 40 milligrams, it's a high dose. And based on average, even though, as you alluded to, there's variability, which gets people into some trouble in terms of mushrooms, like Psilocybe cubensis, which is the most common species in the illicit market in the U.S., This is about equivalent to 5 dried grams, which is right at about where McKenna and others, they call it a heroic dose. You know, this is not hanging out with your friends, going to the concert again. So this is a real deal dose, even to people that like really, you know, just even to psychonauts. And we've even had a number of studies.
Psychonauts.
Yeah, people that, let's astronaut
great
or
term.
cosmonaut, you know, like
Psychonaut.
for
That's a great term.
psychedelics. Yeah, going as far out as possible.
But even for them, even for those who've flown to space before.
Right. They're like, holy shit, I didn't know the orbit would be that far out, you know, like, or I escaped the orbit. I was in interplanetary space there.
So these folks, the 15 folks in the study, there's not a question of dose being too low to truly have an impact.
Right. Very, out of hundreds of volunteers over the years, we've only seen a couple of people where there was a mild effect of the 30 milligrams. And who knows, that person's, their serotonin's, they might have lesser density of serotonin 2A receptors or something. We don't know. But it's extremely rare. For most people, this is like something interesting is going to happen. Put it that way.
Speaking of Joe Rogan, I think that Jamie, his producer, is immune to so maybe he's a good recruit for the study to test.
So that's interesting. Now, the caveat is I'm not encouraging anything illicit, but just theoretically, my first question as a behavioral pharmacologist is like, increase the dose. You know, like really.
Nobody's
Let's see the
immune.
full dose. I'm not telling him Jamie to do that, but like, okay, like, you know, you're taking the same amount that friends might be taking, but yeah.
But he was also referring to the psychedelic effects of edible marijuana, which is there rules on dosage for like marijuana? Is there limits? Like what places where this all goes to, it probably is state by state, right?
It is, but they've gone that direction, and states that didn't initially have these rules now have them. So it's like you'll get, I think, 5 or 10 milligrams of THC being a common, and this is an important thing, like where they've moved from not being allowed to say like have a whole candy bar and have each of the 8 or 10 squares on the candy bar being 10 milligrams, but it's like, no, the whole thing, because like, someone gets a candy bar, they're eating the freaking candy bar. Yeah. And it's like, unless you're a daily cannabis user, if you take 100 milligrams, it's like that's what could lead to a bad trip. Yeah. For someone. And it's like, a lot of these people, it's like, oh, I used to smoke a little weed in college. They might say they're visiting Denver for a business trip, and they're like, why not? Let's give it a shot, And they're like, oh, I don't want to smoke something because it's going to, so I'm going to be safer with this edible. And then they like consume this massive, but there's huge tolerance. So a regular, like for someone who's smoking weed every day, they might take 5 milligrams and kind of hardly feel anything. And they may really need something more like 30, 40, 50 milligrams to have a strong effect. But yeah, so they've evolved in terms of the rules about like, okay, what constitutes a dose, which is why you see less big candy bars and more, or if it is a whole candy bar, you're only getting a smaller dose, like 10 milligrams because that's where people get in trouble more often with edibles. Yeah.
Except Joey Diaz, which I've heard. That's definitely somebody I want to talk to. Out of the crazy comedians I want to talk to as well. Anyway, so yeah, 15, the study of the 15 and the dose not being a question. So like, what was the recruitment based on? What was the, how did the study get conducted?
Yeah, so the recruitment, I really liked this fact. It wasn't people that, largely were, we were honest about what we were studying, but for most people, they were in the category of like, not particularly interested in psychedelics, but more of like, they want to quit smoking. They've tried everything but the kitchen sink. Yeah. And this sounds like the kitchen sink. And it's like, well, it's Hopkins, so, thinking, that sounds like it's safe enough. So, like, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. Like, most of them were in that category, which I really, I appreciate because it's more of a test, just like a better model of what, if these are approved as medicines, like what you're going to have the average participant, be like. And so the therapy involves a good amount of non-psilocybin sessions, so preparatory sessions, like 8 hours of of getting to know the person, like the two people who are going to be their guides or the person in the room with them during the experience. Having these discussions with them where you're both kind of rapport building, just kind of discussing their life, getting to know them, but then also telling them, preparing them about the psilocybin experience. Oh, it could be scary in this sense, blah, blah, here's how to handle it, trust, let go, be open. And also during that preparation time, preparing them to quit smoking, using really standard bread and butter techniques that can all fall under the label typically of the cognitive behavioral therapy. Just stuff like, before you quit, we assign a target quit date ahead of time. You're not just quitting on the fly. And that happens to be the target quit date in our study was the day where they got the first psilocybin dose. But doing things like keeping a smoking diary, like, okay, during the 3 weeks until you quit, every time you smoke a cigarette, just like jot down what you're doing, what you're feeling, what situation, that type of thing. And then having some discussion around that. And then going over the pluses and minuses in their life that smoking kind of comes with, and being honest about this is what it does for me. This is why I like it. This is why I don't like it. Preparing for like, what if you do slip, how to handle it. Like, don't dwell in guilt, because that leads to more full on relapse, just kind of treat it as a learning experience, that type of thing. Then you have the session day where they come in, they 5 minutes of questionnaires, but pretty much they jump into we touch base with them, and we give them the capsule. It's a serious setting, but a comfortable one. They're in a room that looks more like a living room than like a research lab. We measure their blood pressure, their experience, but kind of minimal, kind of medical vibe to it. And they lay down on a couch, and it's a purposefully an introspective experience. So they're laying on a couch during most of the 5 to 6 hour experience, and they're wearing eye shades, which is a better connotation as a name than blindfold. But so they're wearing eye shades, but that's and they're wearing headphones through which music is played. Mostly classical, although we've done some variation of that. I have a paper that was recently accepted, kind of comparing it to more like gongs and harmonic bowls and that type of thing, kind of like sound, kind of.
You've also added this to the science and have a paper on the musical accompaniment to the psychedelic experience. That's fascinating.
Right. And we found basically that about the same effect, even by a trend, not significant, but a little bit better of an effect, both in terms of subjective experience and long-term, whether it helped people quit smoking. Just a little tiny non-significant trend, even favoring the novel playlist with the Tibetan singing bowls and the gongs and all, didgeridoo and all of that. And so anyway, just saying, okay, we can deviate a little bit from this, like what goes back to the 1950s of this method of using classical music as part of this psychedelic therapy. But they're listening to the music and they're not playing DJ in real time. It's like, they're just be the baby. You're not the decision maker for today. Go inward, trust, let go, be open. And pretty much the only interaction like that we're there for is to deal with any anxiety that comes up. So guide is kind of a misnomer in a sense. We're more of a safety net. And so, like, tell us if you feel some butterflies that we can provide reassurance. A hold of their hand can be very powerful. I've had people tell me that was like the thing that grounded them.
Can you break apart trust, let go, be open?
So it was like you'll get, I think, 5.
So, in a sense, how would you describe the experience, the intellectual and the emotional approach that people are supposed to take to really let go into the experience?
Yeah, so trust is trust the context, trust the guides, trust the overall institutional context. I see it as layers of like safety, even though it's everything I told you about the relative bodily safety of psilocybin. Nonetheless, we're still getting blood pressure throughout the session, just in case. We have a physician on hand who can respond just in case. We're literally across the street from the emergency department, just in case. All of that.
Privacy is another thing you've talked about. Just trusting that that whatever happens is just between you and the people in the study.
Right, and hopefully they've really gotten that by that point deep into the study that like they realize that we take that seriously and everything else, and so it's really kind of like a very special role you're playing as a researcher or guide, and hopefully they have your trust, and so and trust that they could be as emotional, everything from laughter to tears, like that's going to be welcomed. We're not judging them. It's like it's a therapeutic relationship where this is a safe container. It's a safe space.
Safe space.
A lot of baggage, but it truly is. It's a safe space for that for this type of experience and to let go. So trust, let's see, let go. So that relates to the emotional, like you feel like crying, cry. You feel like laughing your ass off, laugh your ass off. You know, it's like all the things actually that sometimes it's more challenging with someone has a large recreational use. Sometimes it's harder for them because people in that context, and understandably so, it's more about holding your shit.
Yeah.
Someone's had a bunch of mushrooms at a party. Maybe they don't want to go into the back room and start crying about these thoughts about the relationship with their mother, and they don't want to be the drama queen or king that bring their friends down because their friends are having an experience too, and so they want to like compose.
Yeah.
You know,
and also just the appearance in social settings versus so like prioritizing how you appear to others versus prioritizing the depth of the experience. And here in the study, you can prioritize the experience.
Right, and it's all about like you're the astronaut, and there's only one astronaut.
Yeah.
We're ground control, and I use this often with. I have a photo of the space shuttle on a plaque in my office, and I kind of often use that as an example. It's like we're here for you, like we're a team, but we have different roles. It's just like you don't have to like compose yourself. Like you don't have to like be concerned about our safety. Like we're playing these roles today. And like, yeah, your job is to go as deep as possible or as far out, whatever your analogy is, like as possible. And we're keeping you safe. And so, yeah, and the emotional side is a hard one, you know, because you really want people to, like, if they go into realms of subjectively of despair and sorrow, like cry, you know, like it's okay, you know, and especially if someone's, more macho and, you want this to be the place where they can let go and again, something that they wouldn't or shouldn't do if someone was to theoretically use it in a social setting, and also these other things like even that you get in those social settings of like, yeah, you don't have to like worry about your wallet or being taken advantage, or especially for a woman sexually assaulted by some creep at a concert or something because they're they're laying down.
There's like
far
a million
out
sources of anxiety that are external versus internal. So you can just focus on your own, like, the beautiful thing that's going on in your mind.
And even the cops at that layer, even though it's extremely unlikely for most people that cops would come in and bust them right when, like even at that theoretical, like that 1 in a billion chance, like that might be a real thing psychologically. In this context, we even got that covered. We've got DEA approval. Yeah. Like this is okay by every level of society that counts, that has the authority. So go deep, trust the setting, trust yourself, let go. And be open. So in the experience, and this is all subjective and by analogy, but like if there's a door, open it, go into it. If there's a stairwell, go down it, or a stairway, go up it. If there's a monster in the mind's eye, don't run, approach it, look it in the eye and say, let's talk.
Read it.
Yeah, what's up? What are you doing here? Let's talk turkey,
Dave
And I
Goggins entered the chat. Okay.
Right. It really is that. That really is a heart of it is this radical courage.
Courage.
People are often struck by that coming out. Like this is heavy lifting. This is hard work. People come out of this exhausted, and it can be extremely. Some people say it's the most difficult thing they've done in their life, like choosing to let go on a moment, a microsecond by microsecond basis. Everything in their inclination is to say stop. Sometimes stop this. I don't like this. I didn't know it was going to be like this. This is too much. And Terrence McKenna put it this way: it's like comparing to meditation and other techniques. It's like spending years trying to press the accelerator to make something happen. High dose psychedelics is like you're speeding down the mountain in a fully loaded semi truck, and you're charged with not slamming the brake. It's like let it happen. So it's very difficult and to engage, always, go further into it and take that radical courage, throughout.
What do they say in self-report? If you can put general words to it, what is their experience like? What do they say it's like? Because these are many people, like you said, that haven't probably read much about psychedelics, or they don't have, like with Joe Rogan, like language or stories to put on it. So this is very raw self-report of experiences. What do they say the experience is like?
Yeah, and some more so than others because everyone has been exposed at some level or another, but some of it is pretty superficial, as you're saying. One of the hallmarks of psychedelics is just their variability. So I'm more it's like not the mean, but the standard deviation.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
so wide that it's like it could be like hellish experiences and just absolutely beautiful and loving experiences, everything in between, and both of those, like those could be 2 minutes apart from each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes kind of at the same time concurrently. So let's see, there's different ways to. There were some Jungian psychologists back in the 60s, Masters in Houston, that wrote a really good book, The Varieties of Psychedelic Experience, kind of, which is a play on Varieties of Religious Experience by William James. That they described a perceptual level, and so most people have that, whether they're looking at the room without the eye shades on or inside their mind's eye with the eye shades on. Colors, sounds like this. It's a much richer sensorium, which can be very interesting. And then at another level, Masters in Houston called it the psychodynamic level, and I think you can think about it more broadly than that's kind of Jungian, but just the personal psychological level is how I think of it. Like, this is about your life. There's a whole life review. Oftentimes people have thoughts about their childhood, about their relationships, their spouse or partner, their children, their parents, their family of origin, their current family. Like, that stuff comes up a lot, including like the love, just people just like pouring with tears about like how much, like, it hits them so hard how much they love people.
Yeah.
Like, in a way that, people that, like, they love their family, but, like, it just hits them so hard that, like, how important this is. And, like, the magnitude of that love and, like, what that means in their life. So those are some of the most moving experiences to be present for, is where people, like, it hits home, like, what really matters in their life. And then you have this sort of what Masters in Houston called the archetypal realm, which kind of, again, is sort of Jungian with the focus on archetypes, which is interesting, but I think of that more generally as like symbolic level. So just really deep experiences where you do have experiences that seem symbolic of, very much in like, what we know about dreaming and what most people think about dreaming, like there's this randomness of things, but sometimes it's pretty clear in retrospect, oh, like this came up because this thing has been on my mind, recently. So it seems to be, there seems to be this symbolic level. And then they have the last level that they describe as the mystical integral level, and this is where there's lots of terms for it, but transcendental experiences of unity, mystical type effects we often measure. Europeans use a scale that will refer to oceanic boundlessness. This is all pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
This is like, at some sense, the deepest level of the very sense of self seems to be dissolved, minimized, or expanded, such that the boundaries of the self go into, and here I think some of this is just semantics, but whether the self is expanding such that there's no boundary between the self and the rest of the universe, or whether there's no sense of self, again, might be just semantics, but this radical shift or sense of loss of sense of self or self boundaries. And that's like the most, typically when people have that experience, they'll often report that as being the most remarkable thing. And this is what you don't typically get with MDMA. These deepest levels of the nature of reality itself, the subjectivity and objectivity, just like the seer and the seen become one, and it's a process. And yeah.
And they're able to bring that experience back and be able to describe it.
Yeah, but one of the, to a degree, but one of the hallmarks, going back to William James, of describing a mystical experience is the ineffability. And so even though it's ineffable, people try as far as they can to describe it, but when you get the real deal, they'll say, and even say that though they say a lot of helpful things to help them describe the landscape, they'll say, no matter what I say, I'm still not even coming anywhere close to what this was. Like, the language is completely failing And I like to joke that even though it's ineffable and we're researchers, so we try to F it up by asking them to describe the experience.
I love it.
Yeah.
Good one. But to bring it back a little bit, so for that particular study on tobacco, what was the results? What was the conclusions in terms of the impact of psilocybin on their addictions?
So in that pilot study, it was very small, and it wasn't a randomized study, so it was limited. The only question we could really answer was, is this worthy enough of follow-up?
Yes.
And the answer to that was absolutely, because the success rates were so high, 80% biologically confirmed successful at 6 months. That held up to 60% biologically confirmed abstinent at an average of 2.5 years, a very long follow-up.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, I mean, the best that's been reported in the literature for smoking cessation is in the upper 50%, and that's with not one but two medications for a couple of months, followed by regular